Oh, may I help you?
Hey, hello. Is this Mr. Babero?
Yes, it is.
Hey, it's Dave Hartful at Black Leader Analysis. How you doing?
Just fine. How are you? Can you hear me well enough?
Oh, I can hear you well enough. Yes.
Great. Fine.
Just want to let you know I'm recording the call and I'll post it on YouTube later. That's okay with you, right?
I suppose so.
Okay, great. Yeah, so like I said before, I work at I'm doing a blog called Black Leader Analysis. And what we're doing is finding out different types of black thoughts from all over the U.S. and Africa and things. We're trying to put them together in a matrix so we can better understand, race relations and race in the country and stuff like that. And with the recent events in Charlotte and whatnot, I really wanted to take a look at these Confederate monuments and this Confederate symbolism and, get better acquainted with what's going on with them. And I know that you one of the people that led the protest at University of Nevada, Las Vegas to remove Beauregard the Wolf. Is that correct?
Well, I suppose you're right there. I guess I was in a leadership position there. I down giving speeches and things of that sort. I'm not really a leader, but that was one instance where I took a leadership position.
That's good. That's good. Well, you have a very interesting life. So can we go ahead and start with your childhood and all the world travel you did in your childhood? In your book, you said you lived in Iraq, a couple other places too. Is that
Nigeria.
Correct? Nigeria?
Yes.
Yeah. Your father was a world-class parasitologist or something like that,
Parasitologist.
Right?
Parasitologist. Yes, study of parasites, biologist.
Uh-huh. That's interesting.
Interesting.
Tell us a little bit about all that.
Well, it's interesting. You found a lot of information about us. Dad passed away. My mother and my father passed away both about 5 years ago. My mother was 86, my dad was 92, and they passed away 86 days apart. They traveled much of the world, living in Nigeria, living in Iraq. My father got his PhD, I guess, when I was about 5 years old. And he found just a great deal of difficulty with America, discrimination in America. A black man couldn't get opportunities. So we decided to leave with the intention of never coming back. But things happened. His mother was elderly, and he wanted to see her, and so we ended up returning to this country to our surprise.
Yeah, you were born in Anchorage,
I was
Alaska.
A kid.
Oh yeah,
correct.
Anchorage, Alaska, and your father was Cuban, right?
No, my grandfather was Cuban.
Grandfather was Cuban. Okay, cool. And you discovered your love of poetry when you were in Iraq. Is that correct, Mrs. Metz?
Yes, that's interesting. A teacher by the name of Mrs. Metz, I recently found her name, as a matter of fact, in my father's papers, just saw talent in me for poetry. I never knew I had it, but I guess she was right.
Yeah, I got both your books of poetry. They're available on CD Baby if any of the listeners want to buy them, and Amazon.com. Very impressed by them. You have very interesting views on things. But so your early life, you lived in Nigeria and Iraq, and then you moved back to the United States. Can you tell me a little bit about what would you say how your childhood affected your worldview?
Well, greatly. I wasn't raised in pardon this reference, but it's an honest one. I wasn't raised as a slave because I spent so much of my time, my early childhood outside of this country, living in Africa, where they know their identity. They have problems just as so-called Negroes do, but Africans at least know who they are. They know their own names. They know their ancestry. And I grew up learning to appreciate that. And then in Iraq, we found more brotherhood in Iraq than frankly we did in Africa, in Nigeria. The British had screwed the Nigerians up as much as the Americans had screwed up Negroes. And I use the term Negro intentionally. Being over there, I found a brotherhood and an outlook on life that is not typically the American outlook. And I appreciate that.
Yes. I'm actually doing some work on learning about South Africa, and I found this paper talking about Zulu culture. And it was talking about how a lot of the stereotype of Zulus being tough and being brave, a lot of that came from the mining industry. And they did that so that they could hire Zulus and they would be unafraid to go into dangerous mines. And I'm kind of coupling that with what I know about America. And I think a lot of the stereotypes about black men being, hypersexual and whatnot, I think a lot of that has to do with, like, during slavery times, they needed
Well, now, hold on now.
Huh?
That's not a stereotype.
Yeah, I guess not.
Let's keep some of that stuff.
yeah, I guess so. But
I don't know anything about the Zulu culture.
Mm.
I've never been to South Africa. When Lumumba was murdered, however, and I went through that experience. But in terms of South Africa, I don't know anything about it, really.
Yeah. Okay, we'll go back to the UNLV situation. What made you decide to go to UNLV?
Well, I had moved to, my family moved to Las Vegas. And by the way, our intention was to go back overseas immediately. It wasn't our intention to live here, but the first night we got to town, the university arranged housing for my father, and at that time, there were, to my knowledge, no black Americans living off of what they call the West Side. That's the ghetto in Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. The university arranged housing for my father outside of the ghetto, near the university. And the first night we got there, we had an awakening to American society. Our car was bombed. And over a period of a couple of months, our car was bombed. Rocks were thrown through our windows. People were standing outside at night, outside the apartment building, hollering names, expletives, and our tires on the car were slashed several times. The windows broken several times. And my father simply got angry. And he decided they aren't going to run us out. So he bought the apartment building. And at that point, all that stopped. But that sort of anchored us to Las Vegas and to America. And then we were going to go to Indonesia, a place I'd never been. And Sukarno, the leader at that time, had some political uprising where he banned Americans. We could have gone, but he banned many Americans, so we decided to hold off on that trip. And then as my father was getting older, more mature, he decided to stick around, and he became the first African-American professor at UNLV, and part of his contract was that his family members could go there for free. So I got my BA for free. My brother got his BA for free. My daughter got my daughter got hers virtually free, not quite free, and my mother got her master's for free. So that's why we ended up at UNLV for free.
Well, I was going to ask you if you had misgivings about the mascot, but it sounds like you had misgivings because of actual things happening to you at UNLV and not just the mascot.
Well, no, that wasn't at UNLV. That was in Las Vegas. Las Vegas was a very segregated city when I moved there, a town when I moved there around 1965. I mean, virtually every black person there lived in the ghetto, except for us. There may have been some in Nellis Air Force Base, the military base, but it was just an awful experience. But my experiences were at UNLV. Again, the my thoughts about that Confederate wolf and that Confederate symbol came, I suppose, from my experience living with Americans overseas, and my experience with living with Africans overseas. I just wasn't so tolerant of the nonsense that many, I use the term Negroes, have learned to accept. I didn't accept it. And so it made no sense for black people to run around on the football field with helmets that had a Confederate flag on it. As I said in one of my papers, I think, it's like asking a Jew to wear a swastika. It made no sense, you know? It made no sense to me, and so it became kind of a campaign for me.
Mm. So, one of the things I've heard, I've been looking into this for, a little bit over a month now, different reasons people want to keep these statues up. And I've looked at the Ole Miss situation, I've looked at UNLV, and they'll say things like, well, if you don't like it, just don't go here. And I feel like that's just such a horrible thing to say to somebody. I mean, you should be able to go to wherever you want and not feel uncomfortable because of a mascot or nothing like that. It's just silly to me. And a lot of people try to attempt to say that black people want to remove these mascots simply to put the thumb in their eye of white people and show that they can dominate and force change. Was that any of your motivation when you started writing the letter to the school paper to get the mascot changed and whatnot?
No. One thing, I don't know if I'm answering your question or not, but I simply say no, that was not my motivation. My motivation was simply that it didn't make sense. But I find that, I find still, I found then, that white people, by and large, even those white people who you might consider to be good white people, don't think like we do. Their life experiences have been totally different. So even the better ones of them cannot relate to the things that we have gone through. They don't really consider, by and large, the significance of a Confederate flag and what that may have to do with us. We are, I'm making a totally off base reference, but the OJ trial, for example, was very polarizing in this country. Black people, by and large, were on OJ's side. White people, by and large, were against him. But it comes, I think, from the difference in our lives, the difference in our upbringing. We, for example, were raised, not intentionally, but just because of our experience, just trust the police. White people, by and large, trust them. It's just that we're just simply a different kind of people because we've had a different life experience, by and large.
Mm.
So I was motivated by my life experience.
Mm. Well, for me, I'm from Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and that's one of the homes of a guy named Nathan Bedford Forrest. He started the Ku Klux Klan. And in the 80s and before in Murfreesboro, there was a festival in his honor every year. And they eventually took that away. And so I grew up seeing Confederate flags all the time. I also, the football team at MTSU was called the Blue Raiders. And that's because Nathan Bedford Forrest War Troop would put on Union uniforms and attack Union installations. They were called the Blue Raiders.
Blue Raiders.
Yeah, and they would have a Confederate soldier running around the football field. And I remember that Confederate soldier when I was a little kid. And over the years, they removed the symbolism, and now the mascot is just a Pegasus, but the name is still Blue Raider. But they took away the Confederate symbolism a lot the same way they did at UNLV. And for me, I want the statues and mascots taken down because I see it as it's a hostile action towards me as a person. Even if no one touches me or hits me or no one vandalizes my car, just walking around seeing a Confederate symbol puts into my head that I'm not safe. And I don't feel like I should have to do that when I'm walking to the courthouse. Or I shouldn't have to worry about that when I'm trying to educate myself to be a better value to society. And for me, it's not about aggression towards anybody. It's just about safety for myself so I can feel safe. Another aspect of it, especially with a school mascot, is a huge part of your college life is, um, being able to go to football games.
Yeah.
And party and do things like that. And a lot of the way we're going to be able to reconcile between the races would be these events where we go and we get to cheer together and hang out together. But if you have all this Confederate symbolism running around, then you really can't enjoy the game and get to know people, and you always will have that distrust of everybody else. You'll never grow past that because you're not in situations where you have a bunch of people around you and a bunch of people of different races around you. And I think that's why I want to have it removed. There's not any aggression towards anybody. So,
Go on.
Yeah, I wondered, did the rebel mascot give you any misgivings about going to the college? Like, did you say, these people got a rebel mascot, they've been vandalizing us. Even though I could get school for free here, I might go ahead and go to someplace else where I feel like I won't have to worry about it as much. It sounds like you wanted to stay and fight, though.
Well, I didn't like Las Vegas when I first. In fact, I hated Las Vegas. I was so sorry that we had to stay here. And UNLV at the time was a very tiny school. Only about 7,000 students. You could stand in the middle of the campus and look clear to the mountains, any place. There was just no buildings to block it. I hated it. But my father determined that he was going to stay there, and of course, I didn't have any other options anyway. I was a kid. I was in high school and then moved on to college, so I didn't have a choice. I would, given the choice, I'd have never stayed in Las Vegas. Now I'm back in Las Vegas, coming back between Las Vegas and Los Angeles, but I was away for 30 years. Las Vegas isn't the Vegas it was then. It's much more of a cosmopolitan city. There are, when I left there, when I left before, there were only 7 black lawyers in the entire state of Nevada, 6 in Las Vegas. Now, I don't know how many there are. There are a bunch of them. I don't know how many there are now, but there are a lot of lawyers here now. The city has changed radically.
Yeah. I mean, looking online, it said that it had extremely high minority enrollment at UNLV now. So, I mean... I
don't really know. I don't have any association with UNLV. That was 30 years, more than 40 years ago that I was there. So my daughter's graduated at least 10 years ago. So I don't have any association. My father retired, so I don't know what UNLV is like. But it's a big school now.
Cool. Well, go ahead and tell us about your protest. How did it begin, and who all got involved in it, and whatnot. And what year? Did it start? Did it start your freshman year?
Either my freshman or my sophomore year. Yeah, I was looking online just yesterday at an article that I apparently wrote. You reminded me of that. I didn't remember it. I don't really know how it started, but it was always a bone of contention for me, that Confederate flag and the Confederate Beauregard wolf. It was always an insult to me. Having black people running around wearing the symbols of slavery, And so I got deeply involved. I went around town to various white churches, giving speeches to the audiences, and I was received, openly. They didn't always agree with me, but at least I was received, and I don't know who else was involved. There were a number of people involved, but somehow I was on the radio, others were on the radio with me. Frankly, I don't remember all the people that were, but we got the job done. Well, somewhat done. They being the powers that be, agreed to remove the Confederate references and keep the rebel name.
Okay.
Kind of a Confederate rebel, yes.
Okay, see that's what got me, because because the way I found out about a lot of this stuff is I read Rainer Spencer's report on the rebel, and in that report he claimed that the student body got to vote on both the Wolf Beauregard and the Wolf Beauregard and the Rebels logo. They chose to remove the wolf but keep the Rebels nickname. Do you remember that to be true? Because that's what it says in the Rainer Spencer report.
Quite frankly, I don't remember how. I don't remember how it was decided, but I know that at the time we thought we had gotten something of a victory because they kept the rebel name, but they removed all the Confederate references. By the way, that was 40 years ago. I came back to Las Vegas and I find that they're still trying to fight that same battle. I thought we won that a long time ago. It's interesting.
Yeah, so I should fill the audience in on what all went on with that. So the UNLV was created in the 1950s, 1954 if I remember correctly. And when they were created, they were first part of the
I thought it was 47. Right.
No, yeah, it was 54, and they were part of the University of Nevada, Reno at first, and it was called the University of Southern Nevada at first. And then as the years went on, the University of Southern Nevada wanted to break away and be its own campus. And according to the UNLV officials, the UNR, University of Nevada, Reno, was preventing them from doing that, so they had to quote-unquote rebel against UNR. And that's why they took the moniker of the Rebels. And they did not at first connect Rebels with the Confederacy. But after 3 or 4 years passed, the original school newspaper was called the Rebel Yell, and it had a Confederate battle flag as its moniker. They also called the student body organization the Confederate Students Organization. They had a Confederate Cotillion and a ball back in the 50s. And it seems like there started to be agitation around the 60s, according to the Spencer report. That culminated in the 1970s protest and the letter written by Bert Babero. And you were the only protester mentioned by name in the Spencer report. Have you ever read the Spencer report?
No, I've not. In fact, I don't know who Spencer is. It seemed to me that I was the most active one running around town giving the speeches and things. I don't remember others being involved, but there probably were some.
Yes. And so the Beauregard figure was officially dropped in 1975. And the only likeness of Wolf Beauregard left at UNLV was at the old basketball court that was turned into an art museum. They never removed Beauregard's symbol from there. And so during So in the 70s, they switched, after 75, they switched to a UNLV colonial militiaman as the mascot, but it never took on. And then they took on the Sun, UNLV Sun, but they just didn't have a mascot at all. And then in 1982, they come up with the cartoon character called Hey Reb or Mr. Reb. He goes by both names. Now, so Mr. Reb, according to the school, is an 1800s Pathfinder. Now, the official image given by the school of the Pathfinder has him in a red Western garb and a gray hat. But most UNLV logos just show a white man in a gray hat. And the Spencer report actually calls out people that assume that a white guy in a gray hat is racist, because Rainer Spencer flips it and says that you're the racist if you think a white guy in a gray hat automatically is a Confederate and automatically is fighting for slavery. And so his explanation was you have to look at the whole cartoon, and it's an 1800s Pathfinder. Well, then the next question is, why is his name Hey Reb or Mr. Reb? And, they just say it just is Mr. Reb. It's not really short for rebels, and rebels could mean a lot of different things. They said Steve Jobs was a rebel, so that's a rebel that's not a Confederate. But to me, it kind of felt like they were trying to just get one over on you. they had a guy in a gray hat, and he's running around the basketball court. 90% of the people that see him are going to think he's a Confederate soldier. And I mean, if you see him in a red Western outfit, you may not think that, but I found plenty of depictions of Hey Reb that was in a gray Western outfit. So to me, it looks like a Confederate symbol. And if you want to remove all Confederate imagery, why not just change the name and change the whole mascot and the whole nine? And that's why I'm kind of looking into this more. So how would you feel about the current mascot of Hey Reb? Do you like Hey Reb? Do you feel like Hey Reb is a Confederate? Do you think he's not a Confederate?
Well, I'll tell you, I've been away from Las Vegas for more than 30 years. I've just sort of moved back here about 8 months ago. I'm still going back and forth to Los Angeles, but I've spent much of my time here in the last 8 months. So I'm not really up on what's going on with the mascot. I didn't even know what the mascot was. I was surprised when I read they were still going through that fight. Having said that, let me say that there's a difference between white people in general and black people in general. And white people in general have their outlook because of the way they were raised, their upbringing. We have another, and we can almost never get them to understand the pain we've gone through because they haven't felt it. So they will accept almost anything because they love that old heritage, that old slavery heritage, but it's painful to us. And so that probably is just another trick that they're using to hang on to that old, as much of that old Confederacy as they could, and we should resist it.
Well, you know Rainer Spencer's black, right?
I don't know who he is.
Yeah, Rainer Spencer's black. He's actually an African American studies professor at UNLV, and his
he wasn't there when I was there.
Oh, okay. Rainer Spencer actually is a expert. His area of expertise is actually mixed race identity, and he wrote a lot of theses on and papers on mixed race identity and how people should handle their mixed race identity. So, but according to Rainer Spencer, he doesn't have any problem with it. He claims that none of the student body currently have a problem with it. He said that nobody on the west side of Las Vegas has a problem with it. Do you remember any of that to be true? I mean, I know huh?
Well, I cut you off. Go on, finish the sentence, and then I'll respond.
Yeah, I was. I know you had to have spent a lot of time on the west side, just being black. You know, you didn't have pretty much anywhere else to.
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay.
I didn't spend a lot of time on the west side. Again, I didn't live on the west side. And frankly, I've always sort of been anti-ghetto. The white man has herded us into the ghettos, and I always resented that. So I didn't spend a lot of time on I spent a lot of time with black people, but not in the ghetto. But one thing I did notice when I was going through my argument over the rebel mascot is the number of black people, Negroes, that I spoke to who told me to get a petition for them to sign. Don't bother me none. You know, I'll sign it, but I never thought about it. They had been so conditioned by this slavery that they were desensitized to all of that. We sort of had to make them aware of what it all meant. Most of them were not aware. And so this Spencer fellow may be reflecting the two sentiments. Many black people were not conscious of it. So they weren't offended. They didn't know what it was about.
Well, I kind of wondered about the report because I'm a Southerner. I'm from Tennessee. I've always loved the South and stuff, but it's like this Confederate symbolism. And that's one of the reasons I hate the Confederate symbolism so much, because I feel like if I express to people that I love being from the South, I love being from Tennessee, the first thing in their head is the Confederacy. When that was 4 years of our history, there's so much more to the South than that, you know? And that's another reason why the Confederate symbolism bothers me so much, because like I hate that the only thing people know about that's not from the South know about it is the Confederacy. And there's so much more to the South than that, you know. And if you start talking about, I feel like if I start talking about, you know, just loving being back home and the different things, that people like kind of look at me funny. I mean, it's a very deep emotional thing for me, you know. And I was thinking that maybe the reason I feel so emotionally repulsed by Confederate symbolism is because I am Southern, and maybe things were better out west, so people kind of just got over that kind of thing, and it seriously doesn't bother them anymore. Maybe that was it. And I don't know a lot of black people from out west.
I don't think that's it.
That's not it.
But I don't believe so. I'm going to take some issue with what you said about the 4 years. The 4 years was sort of the tip of the iceberg, the end of it. That whole Southern anti-black, pro-slavery movement had been going on for over 100 years down there. It culminated in the Civil War that the South, that the Confederacy lost. But the lifestyle down there before the Confederacy was terrible for black people, and terrible afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, of course, you know, and I'm just trying to like explain how I feel about the South. You know what I mean? It's just it's more of a emotional connection, and I was trying to but it is tough, this issue, and I understand that there are people who don't understand all this history, and to them it is just about Southern being Southern, you know. And I'm trying to think of a way to where...
I think it's more than that.
You think it's more than that?
More than Southern. I think it's more... I mean, frankly, and I went to law school in Houston, in Texas. Black people, I'm going to say this guardedly, but I'm going to say it. Black people, black Southerners, black people down south are frankly, those who are sophisticated, are more sophisticated than black people will say up in the north. Because all the black institutions of higher learning are down south. And you have some very sophisticated black people down there. You don't have that so much up north. And I think it makes a difference. So I don't love the South, but I respect it. Black people down south anyway. Strange, yeah?
yeah. It's pretty interesting. So tell us about your life after college, after you left UNLV. You said you went to Texas Southern for your Juris Doctorate, right?
Right. I immediately, I came back to Las Vegas and immediately moved to California. Again, Vegas wasn't what it is now. It was just an awful place there. As far as I was concerned, it was an awful place. I didn't like Las Vegas for one bit. And quite candidly, I found the black people in Las Vegas just be very much behind the times at the time, you know. And I was glad to get away. Of course, the white people were the same as white people are everywhere, by and large. I moved to California and I simply enjoyed it. I enjoyed it for 30 years. I practiced law there and enjoyed it. And now, I haven't done much traveling except for Ecuador and Nicaragua and places like that. But now I'm back to LA, back to Las Vegas rather, spending more of my time here. And I find it to be a much, much better place than it was when I left. I didn't come back for 15 years at all. And then slowly I started coming bit by bit.
Well, that's great. I'm glad you're back in Las Vegas. You worked as a financial planner also, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So you did financial planning. It said in your book, and I want to say there was something else.
Real estate.
Real estate.
Principally a real estate. That's principally what I do now. I'm a real estate investor. I was a real estate lawyer, and then I got involved in real estate investing, and that's what I do principally now, real estate investing. But I was a financial planner, Didn't like it at first. It was just a means to an end. And then I got involved with a company called IDS, who did real financial planning. I became their lead agent at that place, and I got a real respect for financial planning. In fact, it was my intention to set up my law practice as a financial planning law practice, but somehow I got off into real estate.
That's interesting. So of all the jobs you had, and you've written poetry also. You have 2 poetry books out, Enigma and Attitude.
Actually, a third. There's a third one coming out.
Oh, wow. Go ahead and tell us about that.
About what?
Oh, you have a third a third poetry book coming out?
Yes, I'm about 60% through with the third one. However, I just sort of dropped it because I had written in the first 2 books about all the things that struck me as being things I wanted to write about. And the third one, I just sort of stopped. I wanted to go in a different direction. I'm going to complete it, but I wanted to go in a different direction, maybe a different poetic style. My books were really more, or are really more, written for poetry's sake, not for the message, but for the art. But I find that in order to demonstrate the art, I have to have a subject matter, and so I ended up writing on subjects that really concerned me. However, my first book, I wrote a lot on the racial situation. There were a lot of poems in there about the racial situation, and I went from the first book to the second book rather quickly. I decided to break up the book, take some of the racial things out of the first book, and spread them out over the other 2 books. I didn't want to appear angry. I wanted my poetry to be reviewed differently, as more as poetry than as a message. But I still want the message. So I simply spread it out over the 3 books. Most of those were in the first book initially.
That's interesting. That's interesting. So of all the different jobs you've had, which has facilitated your spiritual growth the most, you would say?
Well, number one, I've hardly had any jobs. I've almost always been self-employed. So if you're asking which one affected me the most,
yes,
perhaps I guess the practice of law. I did that practice of law affected me the most. It gave me, opened more doors, gave me more opportunity, and of course I was exposed to much more. But financial planning, I did it for lesser time, but financial planning was interesting also. But law had to have been the most influential in my life.
Wow,
it got me involved in real estate.
Oh, so you were a business lawyer?
I was a real estate bankruptcy lawyer.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's
bankruptcy. Bankruptcy principally was involved in real estate, trying to stop people from being foreclosed upon. Interesting. My brother, on the other hand, is a banking lawyer, and he was representing the companies that were doing the foreclosing, and I was representing the people who were being foreclosed upon.
That's interesting. So I read your book, Enigma, and I found it really interesting because you are affiliated with the Republican Party. That's correct?
Yeah.
You're a Republican, but in the book you talk a lot about prison reform, criminal justice reform. You even mention reparations in the book. So I don't normally see people with this deep understanding of what we've gone through and what needs to be done to rectify it and how the system needs to be fixed, but are also for small government. Can you take some time to explain to us how all that fits together for you?
Well, you see, I think I heard Jesse Jackson say once, and it's something that I kind of take to heart. I never wanted to have the Democrats take us for granted and the Republicans simply to write us off. My joining the Republican Party was not so much because, I love white people or I believe in the Republican philosophy. It was more that I simply did not want to be one of the crowd. I did not want to be just another Democrat who was taken for granted. The value of a black Republican, because there are so few of us, is far greater than the value of a black Democrat, amongst which there are many. But I am African American first, American, if you will, second, and Republican third. That's the order of my loyalty.
Yeah, I understand a lot about the conservative party. I was more conservative when I was in my early 20s than I am now. I'm pretty left leaning now. So I can definitely see that as far as the Republican Party. Do you feel like the Republican Party could embrace some of the things you're talking about, like criminal justice reform or reparations? Do you feel like you could work within the Republican Party to make some of those changes come to fruition, to where more black people would join up with the Republicans?
Oh, sure. Let me say, though, that the Republican Party...
Saying about the Republican Party was difficult to follow during the Obama years?
Yes. Again, as I indicated before, I am African American first, American, if you will, second, and Republican third. So my first loyalty is to black people. And Obama was, of course, a black president. So if they were against him, then I was against them. Just as simple as that.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that kind of perspective on Obama. I was really disappointed, though, with Obama not really, feel like he could have done more for us, basically, as far as getting money put into the community, the black business grants and things during Obama's years. The amount of money went down all 8 years. The set aside for minority business went down during the Obama years. So there's some other statistics too about the Obama years that give me a lot of misgivings as far as was he a good president for us or not, or was it really moving the ball forward for us or not?
Well, I think his presidency was a delusion to a certain extent. An illusion in that President Obama was not a black president, meaning he was not there for the purpose of protecting black rights and putting forward a black agenda. He would never have been elected that way. He was, as I heard, I believe it was Minister Farrakhan once say, he was the miner of the white man's store. He was on the job. So there were so many things that he might have wanted to do, but he couldn't do. You can't stay in office and represent the entire country when you're trying to represent one person or one type of person. So he was representing the entire country and not limiting him. But having said that, the mere fact that we had that symbolism is so important for us. A black man being in a position to become the president was an accomplishment in and of itself. I think that was good.
That was good. So, how do you feel about Trump then? Do you feel like he's a detriment to the community? Do you feel like it's his impact is overblown sometimes?
Well, I liked him when he was a boxing promoter. I wish he'd stayed a boxing promoter. He's reckless. Yeah. Reckless, dangerous. He is not doing the things he said he was, the reckless things he said he was going to do, but words alone are dangerous. His words are dangerous, whether his actions are or not. He hasn't been performed, but his words alone are dangerous, and people don't understand how significant words can be. Words can be fighting words. Words can evoke tremendous emotions, and he is dangerous because of that.
I totally agree with you on that one. Today or yesterday, he tweeted out a GIF of him hitting a golf ball and it hitting Hillary Clinton, knocking her out. And
I didn't see that.
yeah, I think he thought it was funny, but I mean, in reality, I mean, the wrong person sees that from Trump, and then they'll be trying to hit golf balls at, people they don't like. Who would you say you're rooting for in 2020 to come up? Would you like to see Kamala Harris?
I'm not rooting.
Huh?
Oh, sure. Well, I mean, anybody black, I would like to see in a position. Even Clarence Thomas. I say that jokingly, but I don't really know who the up and coming politicians are right now. I have a couple of names in mind. Kamala Harris is new to Congress, but I'll keep an eye out. But I'm always going to support a reasonable black candidate, because that puts us in a better position. When we have black people doing things, it enables us all to do something. When black people aren't doing things, it makes it very difficult for us to do something. Imagery is so important.
I can understand that sentiment. So how did you feel about Republicans like Herman Cain or Ben Carson? Do you feel like they were reasonable candidates? Do you like either of those candidates?
Herman Cain, I don't really remember much at all. Carson, I don't know. I was glad to see him there, but I couldn't really tell where his views were. His views seemed to be, I watched debates like others did, but I never heard him take any significant stand one way or the other. So I don't know why he at one point was the leading candidate, because he never seemed to have espoused any major Republican policies, and of course never espoused any major pro-black policies. I just don't know. But the fact that he was there, I regard as positive.
I can definitely.
We are not. We are not a monolithic people the way they would like to think of us. We are different. Although there are certain similarities because of the background we've had, there are some certain similarities, but we are very different, and perhaps that's good. I just don't know about this man. I didn't hear him say anything that made him stand out in my mind, but the fact that he was in that position, I respect.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, it's almost been about 50 minutes now. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. Can you tell our viewers where they can find you at?
Well, right now I'm in Las Vegas. I'm in Las Vegas and Los Angeles, but I've spent most of my time in the last 8 months in Las Vegas. You have my telephone number. My email address is bbabero@gmail.com. Mm-hmm. That's my personal email address that I use. There's also a business email address, but that's for real estate purposes. But that's all I can be reached.
Okay.
I've been out of this for a while.
Yeah, I was wondering if you had a website, though. Do you have an active website?
I do have a website, and I think it's CMT. It's a website that deals with real estate matters. I have 2 Facebook pages that deal with real estate matters. CMT Investment Trust is my company. CMTinvestmenttrust.com. Then I think there's also CMTtrust.com. Charlie Maria Tango Trust, Investment Trust. That's the website. But it doesn't deal with any of the things we've been talking about. It's strictly involved in my real estate investment business.
Okay. I appreciate your time, and I hope to see you again on the site. Feel free to chime in anytime.
I'll do that. Thanks very much for talking to you.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Bye.